You can keep offering a version of what everyone else is doing, or you can begin offering only what you can do. And so that's the invitation, not just for me, I think, but for all of us, is we don't have to perform anymore and tap dance, and we don't have to adapt and contort ourselves, but we can really make the decision to offer, to bring forward, to create that which only we can create. Your identity is your gift. Your gift is not separate from your identity. Your identity and your gift are the same. So when you lead from your identity, your gifts flow. Your gifts come into the world. First of all, I want to welcome you. And I'm so honored that you guys are here with me. This idea for the Oracle forecast came at 3 a.m. in the morning about 3 weeks ago. And I sat up for an hour and a half and mapped out the whole thing. And probably at 8 o'clock in the morning, I got on my WhatsApp chat with Elizabeth, Alyse, Louisa, and Baljit and said, "You guys want to do this?" And they all said yes. And I was so grateful because we've been talking for about the last 8 or 9 months, actually, ever since the Bewitched Breaking the Spell After Spiritual Mentoring Goes Wrong podcast series came out that Alyse and I co-hosted, and these other women participated in as experts and leaders. And I feel like that it's time to change the conversation. We've been having conversations in our WhatsApp groups and behind the scenes, and now we're just bringing it into all of our colleagues as well, because it's time for a change. I'm sure that everybody is aware of that in one way or another. So I want to welcome you. And I just want to say a couple of things. This isn't a prediction panel. I've sat on those before, and I remember how much pressure I would feel to make something sound really fancy or something really exciting coming in the future. And this isn't also a broadcast from a mountaintop. This is a field. This is a round table. We all have seats at this table, and it's held by a group of women who are both spiritually attuned and professionally seasoned. So we are here to speak not from performance or spectacle or tap dancing on the stage, but really from stillness and really from a place of high integrity. So we're not here to forecast the future. Not really, anyway. What we're here to do is really name what we've already felt shifting beneath the surface in our own lives, and to speak from clarity, not from charisma and not from performance, but just from what's real for us, what we're experiencing, boots on the ground, thinking caps on our heads, open hearts. And this is really for all of us, for those of us who are really building what's meant to come next. So I want to share a dream that I had this morning. You can't make this stuff up, truly. I'm still processing it. But this morning I had a dream, and it was very much Hunger Games vibe. Like there was control and punishment, and all of the people were trying to do the right thing. And they were constantly being punished and constantly being reprimanded and shamed. And I was one of those people, and I was helping them, but I wasn't in charge. I wasn't like one of the overlords that was there. I wasn't in charge, but I was helping the people. I was helping my people. I was being kind. And there was a moment in this dream, for example, where this woman, it was cold, and one of the overlords had given her a pair of socks, and she put them on her hands and to warm up her hands. And I said later in the day, when the air had warmed up, I said, "Why don't you take those off and put them on your feet?" So I helped her take one of the socks off her hand. And as I did, the overlord came over and pulled the sock out of my hand and said, "That's not hers. She was given that, but it's not hers." And he just took it away. And at that moment, I just looked at the whole scene and I walked away. And I thought in my dream, you guys deal with this. I'm not dealing with this anymore. As I stood inside of that dream, I could see we were on the coast, and I could see the ocean, and I could see all the people on the beach. And suddenly I started watching the waves start rising up, not in a tsunami really, but just really big waves. And I saw this stream of yellow poison coming in a big flow toward the beach. And I could smell chlorine, because I taught swimming lessons from the time I was a kid. So I knew that smell. I could smell the chlorine. And the people in the beach and the people in the water started inhaling the chlorine. And when you do that, it can be fatal. And so I was aware of that. And I was watching all these people down below dying from the poison of the waters. And I realized in that moment, like the whole of this world, especially in the spiritual spaces, it's toxic on some level, not all of it, but there is a toxic stream that comes into our spaces. And I was very aware of that in my dream. And toward the end of the dream, after I'm watching the people and the dead bodies wash into shore, I remember having this moment, and it actually woke me up. And I, like deep in my core, like from the middle of who I am, I said in my dream, never again. And when I did that, this big metal door slammed shut and locked, and I woke up. And I woke up with those words, and I could feel them, never again. I could feel those vibrating in my body. And the next thing that came through, you should know my French is not particularly good in this lifetime, but it's my soul's language. And what came through was the French. Plus jamais. Never again. Plus jamais. Never again. And it was at that point that I really recognized that for me, something has very much ended, and perhaps for you as well. And it's ended not in a collapse or anything like that, but it's ended for me with this clarity and conviction. So before I introduce our oracles tonight, I want to talk a little bit about what the word oracle actually means, because it matters here. The word oracle has been distorted and packaged and performed, but the root of that word tells a different story. The word oracle comes from the Latin, which is oraculum. I hope I said that correctly, which is derived from the verb orare, meaning to speak, to plead, or to pray. So originally, the word oracle wasn't the woman, it was the voice, it was the utterance and the sacred message that came through. But over time, of course, it's become to mean the woman who spoke the message, a threshold keeper, a voice that gave shape to the unseen. She didn't predict, but she revealed, and she spoke in riddles often, as we know from Greek mythology. And she spoke through presence. So really, that's what we're doing here tonight, not forecasting and not performing, but just speaking from the place where truth and honesty and heart meet. And that's why we're here tonight. So now, with that, thank you for being here. And now I want to introduce our speakers tonight. I want to bring these extraordinary women and name them. They're all credentialed and coded. Each of these women you're going to hear from tonight are high-level professionals. They come from that background. I'm a former psychologist. Alyse has a master's degree in counseling and spent years in middle schools with the bravest of the brave, I would say, Alyse, with that experience. And Elizabeth has a master's degree in engineering. Baljit comes from a background of architecture. And Louisa has led in the field of health and human services. So we've all, in addition to that, have integrated our multidimensional gifts and spiritual sight into our work. And so we're not here like spiritual influencers or anything like that. We're really here as experienced leaders who have embodied our spiritual and energetic gifts in such a way, in as best we can at this time, I will say. In addition to that, we've each walked through systems and breakdowns and awakenings and integrations. And you heard some of that during the Breaking the Spell podcast series. So if you're here tonight, what I want to say is that there's a really good chance that you're also credentialed and coded. And you've also lived in the systems and you've seen what doesn't work. And quite likely you're carrying something inside of you, a gift inside of you that only you can offer, that only you can bring. And so this space, this roundtable is for you as well. Okay, deep breath. Everybody ready? Oracles ready? Begin. I sound like a marching band. All right. I was trying to decide. I think I would like to start with Baljit, if that is okay, Baljit. And I want to introduce Baljit. You will hear her podcast coming out later tonight because Mama got busy today. But Baljit, I would like to just invite you to do some introductions and just speak into sort of the themes that you spoke about yesterday on your podcast, and then just anything else that comes through for you tonight, which is valid and valuable to us. Thank you.
Oh, I saw you blend in validation, Baljit.
Yes, yes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Baljit Rayat. I am a board certified sexologist, a Tibetan Tantra practitioner, former architectural technologist, a producer, and DJ. Also do readings through the Akashic Records and used to teach it for many years. Yeah, the conversation was really profound, and in talking about identity and the importance of our sexual energy and how as women we have these certain roles in life, such as the daughter, the mother, the teacher, the wife, the caretaker. And when we actually forget about who we really are at the core, it's easy to misdirect our sexual energy because we are sourcing that energy into these different roles. And within that, it causes symptoms such as low libido, feeling ungrounded, feeling uninspired, feeling a lack of desire, lack of inspiration, lack of imagination. And it just really feels like going into 2026, there is this big awakening with all of collectively with our sexual energy, but also it's like things are being shaken up in regards to our identity. Who are we? What are we meant to do? How are we meant to express ourselves? So there's a lot of unpacking that is happening, but also really understanding where we're misdirecting our sexual energy. And we all have stuff. We all gone through different kinds of trauma, micro and macro, and really recalibrating ourselves so that we can redirect it in the way that really aligns to us so that we're able to express our gifts and our talents and also evolve with healthy relationships, healthy dynamics, and even vitality within ourselves. So I really spoke to this reclamation of our sexual energy, but also what we talked about yesterday, it just felt like the identity piece was really popping out. Yeah.
It's really interesting as I ran a analysis of all of our conversations over the past 5 days. What are the kind of core themes that came out? And one of them was about identity. So we'll be talking more about that as we continue the conversation. I wanted to invite everybody, if you have a specific question for Baljit, you can type it into the chat. And I also want to open it up to Elizabeth, Louisa, and Alyse and see, does anybody want to riff on what Baljit has started or ask a clarifying question?
And nothing's ever too little with sexual energy. Like,
oh yeah, it's like awkward. Robyn's saying we should ask about
sex. This is Auntie Bal here. When I talk about sexual energy, this is like beyond the act of sex, right? Like we think about the amount of programming that we have had instilled in us, whether it's cultural, religious, societal, governmental, and whatnot, that have separated ourselves from our own creation. So this is really about our creative life force. So this can also relate to our creativity, activating that inner fire, that inner desire as well. That's also what I mean in regards to sexual energy, and also pleasure beyond the bedroom, beyond physical pleasure. It's also how often do we allow pleasure just with how we taste food, how we move in everyday life, and the textures of clothing that we wear, and the limitations that we've had in regards to that. So just want to add that in.
I love that because it expands into the aesthetic in our lives. And for those of you who have taken the Neo personality profile, if you score very high on openness to experiences, one of the key facets of that is aesthetics. It's being sensitive to beauty. And I always say that for those of us who are open, and if you're here, the likelihood that you are open is, I'm going to say 94%. But the idea that, like what I say about the aesthetic is that beauty and pleasure is not an option for us. If we don't have that, I don't know about you, but I get badly behaved. So it's that one of the things that stood out for me about our conversation yesterday, Baljit, is this idea of misdirected energy, misdirected sexual energy, and where it gets tangled up in addictions or in just other perspectives or other roles in our lives. Can you speak just a little bit more to that?
So misdirected sexual energy is when we're not connected with our sexual energy, we end up repressing it. So then with that repression, it gets misdirected into other places. And when it gets misdirected, it's because you're outsourcing it or directing it to fulfill an unmet need because you feel that void with your sexual energy. So it could be scrolling on social media to get that dopamine hit. And that's a way of misdirecting your sexual energy because maybe that creative life force could be spent on you and creating the book that you've been wanting to create for so long. Or maybe it's porn, misdirecting sexual energy with porn when you're you're avoiding intimacy within your partnership, right? So it could be with food addiction, hiding, so many other things when we misdirect it. But the byproduct of that is we end up feeling drained. We end up feeling disconnected. And it's this feedback loop that just keeps going and going, and we feel stuck and it creates stagnation. It also can create physical symptoms, especially within the womb, like such PCOS and fibroids, perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms as well. Those are all byproducts of stuck sexual energy. So when you're experiencing stuff, especially around the womb space and in that area, it's really looking at, okay, I've got some stuck sexual energy, like what and why is it not moving? And where am I misdirecting it? And how can I redirect it back?
Thank you. So what you're seeing, if I'm going to summarize, is coming in 2026 is lots of shake, rattle, and roll around the misdirected so that we come back to the original intention of the energy, which is to create. Yes?
Yeah. Yeah. And I also talked about how sexual energy has been so inverted, right? So that's why so many of us have misdirected it subconsciously and consciously. So redirecting it where it's no longer being inverted. And I think that's a really big thing because that is tied into our identity as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. And speaking of creativity, I would love to invite Elizabeth Purvis to come forward, take the mic as our magician in residence. And
Thank you.
and what would you like to share tonight to our, I was going to say to our club, to our roundtable?
To our
Maybe it is
club.
a club. We don't, it could be a club.
Absolutely. A special club gathering, special group of people attracted to this conversation. And I just want to thank Robyn and give her major props and snaps for putting this together. It's just, yeah, it's just beautiful. And I got to say, I too was struck by the themes because I haven't listened to anyone else's interview yet. And what I shared about, which I'll share a little bit here in a minute, has really been bubbling up for the past, I don't know, I would say 3 to 4 years, actually. So if you don't know me, many of you do. My name's Elizabeth Purvis. I am a business coach, or was until very recently. I'm in a big transition, but I've been on the online world. I've been on the online teaching coaches, practitioners, healers, teachers, leaders, as I call them, to create epic money in their business for many years. Like I was one of the first teachers of high end, and I've been doing that in some way, shape, or form for a very long time. And on top of that, I have the computer science degree, as Robyn mentioned, and I have a background in engineering and then magicianing. I've been a practitioner of Western esoteric arts for a very, very long time. So all of that comes together in what I do. And I have the kind of the metaphysical teacher side and the business coach side. And those two things riff on each other. And one of the reasons why is because I'm very passionate. Ultimately, it's always been about creativity for me and making stuff and like actually creating. Like when I was a very young kid, I was always making stuff in my bedroom, and I have yarn over there and I have crochet hooks over there and I've got beading supplies out on the table.
Oh, wait, time out. We have to do memory lane. When you were a kid, what did you create? What were some of your favorite things?
I remember doing pom-poms and like creating pom-pom animals. And I had a latch hook kit and latch hook. Like
I mean, latch hook.
I remember being 6 years old doing latch hook. Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about, obviously, the theme of creativity. And for me, that's what all the manifesting stuff that we see in our industry is ultimately about. And I have a body of work around that. And I love the business coaching because for me, the metaphysical pieces and the magicianing has to have an outcome. It's got to have a direction to go in. But because I've been in this world for so long, I've seen it's so cool. Like I've seen the arc. I'm a nerd for the arc and the storyline. Is anyone else trapped?
Of course. But
Right.
I was going to say, you guys, Elizabeth is one of the few people I trust in her analysis of the arc of the spiritual development space. It's fascinating. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to that end, including where we are now.
Yeah. So when I first got on the scene, I quit my job at the beginning of 2007 and I struggled for a couple of years before I figured things out. And there was a turning point. And like I said, I have this background in Western esoterics. I have a couple of initiations in an actual real Wiccan tradition, RWT, whatever. But in taking that, I really made a commitment that I was going to pass that on in some way, but I knew I wasn't going to be like a coven leader. And so I was, how's this all going to kind of come about? And in 2009, I got my marching orders, and the marching orders were, okay, you're going to be a part of the movement to bring magic to the mainstream. And at the time, I was like, holy crap, this is scary. And I cried and all of that. When I entered into all that is to say, when I entered into the world of coaching, which is what I started as a direct response copywriter, but then I entered into the coaching space, I started watching this trajectory because it wasn't just me who was called. And this was a year after The Secret came out. And I see The Secret coming out is when the tide started to turn. And I watched as we all went through this progression and the different pieces of transformational work and healing work, which is all aspects of magic too, started to come online. So when I first got into this in 2007, no one was talking about any of it. We were talking about action steps, right? And then the mindset
Yep,
got flipped on and everyone was like, it's the mindset. We all need mindset. And then you go a little bit further along and then it was subconscious programming. And that's the next kind of evolution of mindset is like, we've got these subconscious beliefs and we've got to unpack the subconscious beliefs. And it's fascinating. And then the trauma stuff came on. Then trauma and nervous system was first. And Louisa probably remembers this too, because we were in programs together and people started talking about nervous system and how it affects everything and will shut things down. And some of my clients were some of the first people to really start talking about that. And so then that came online, and then the whole trauma awareness piece came online. And I'm sitting here going, and meanwhile, we're going from, I remember being absolutely, speaking of nervous system, like completely floored and taken out for 3 months because I'd revealed myself as a witch online and talking about the divine feminine in 2010 to witches of Instagram and magic being everywhere and all these manifesting teachers. And so on the one hand, I'm like, and on the other hand, I'm also tracking all the things where we are now. And I shouldn't have been so surprised, but the theme that came through in all of our conversations is it is time to actually start doing the magic for the purpose of creating reality.
Can you say that for the people in the back?
Yeah, it's time to start doing the magics for the purpose of creating reality. When I first started getting trained way back in the 90s, I was like, holy crap, there's this technology to make shit happen, to create stuff. I was like ambitious type A back then. And so when I think about teaching creative powers, right, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about let's do it to do the things.
Yeah.
Not just get stuff to really, it is about being more fully expressed. And it is about, right, the big secret, which is that we are God, goddess. But for what? So that we can activate and fully use our God, goddess powers. And I really feel that there's the invitation, because I don't think everyone's quite caught up yet. I feel like we're all leading edge here, is to start to shift from this real focus on healing and trauma. And I almost feel like weird saying that because that work is so important and it's what facilitates the rest of it.
But this is a really good point, Elizabeth, because we'll get to Alyse in a little bit and work that I do as well, because and some of you all who are listening in as well, like that's our wheelhouse. But for what purpose? Because it's
But
not to
for
stay
what?
on the spiritual industrial complex machine.
I have always been interested in the so you can. I'm a copywriter at heart. So you're doing XYZ, so you can create PDQ. And I'm like, what is the so you can? And I feel we're really being asked to get into a different relationship, get into right relationship with healing and transformation. Because as I started watching this whole thing unfold, I've always been at it. I've always been in it for the magicianing. I've always been in it for the what am I making? And I've wanted to skip steps. Let's be clear. I wanted to skip some of the healing and transformation steps. And I've done my work around that too. But it's like as I've seen all these pieces unfold, it's still been in the realm of we want to heal so that we are complete. We want to transform so that we're complete, when the real message that I carry is that you're whole and complete already. And we all know that, right? But it's so given that you're already God, and the things that we're healing is so that we can remember that we're God and have the physical, be able to actually access that in our physical bodies, right? Because it's our physical bodies that in our human, very human system keeps us from the God powers, right? So now I feel like until now I've seen all the magic-y work have the healing and transformation overlay. And what I'm very interested in now, and the invitation that I will have to my community going forward is, so you can, right?
Yeah.
You're not just God to be God. We're all creative substance. We're all God. So we can. One of my first earliest teachers was like, your purpose is to create. That's your purpose on the planet. And I think about that and I'm like, our other purpose is connection, right? Our other purpose, but I think create. And if we think about the whole human dilemma, separation versus connection, years ago in my coach training, the quote that was given to me from a dude who started a coach school, there's only one problem and it is separation. There's only one solution, it's connection. So connection and creative power are like what we're here for on a very meta level. And we get to see that now.
It occurs to me too, Elizabeth, as you were talking about wanting to skip steps early in your career, knowing and having all of this technology available to you and wanting to skip the steps that you went through. And I was thinking about, do you guys remember what's the Mickey Mouse, the Sorcerer's Apprentice? When Mickey Mouse and he just completely loses control as the apprentice of this magic. And I was thinking about that for us, the idea that who we are now in this moment for this time, we are well prepared to wield our creative abilities, our magical abilities with discernment, with maturity, and probably we won't lose control of our magic mop as easily as we would have 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
I do. And here's the cool thing is that we have the technologies, not just for the magic-y parts, but for the healing and transformation.
Yes. Yes.
I've been doing some work with Alyse. It's been incredibly powerful. So shout out to the goddess Alyse. But it's like, I can just move things like this.
Yeah.
I don't need to spend. I don't need to spend a year on a mountaintop overcoming something. We all have. And it's because of us as a collective have mastered these technologies of healing and transformation. So we get to be in, and it never ends. I'm going to have more crap to move through, as will all of you. But it's like we get to be in relationship with that. That is part of breaking the spell of, and I don't like to use this word, but I'll use it right now, of victimhood. Because we are brainwashed into thinking that we are victims. And that's part of what we're all a stand about, is that's not true. But we get to break out of that very quickly. And we get to bring that to the people in our communities and people outside of our communities who don't have access to this yet, or who have access to it in a different way. We get to be the models, not just for us here in the transformation space, in our communities, in our backyards, and people who are waking up, because trauma healing is in the New York Times now, which is like, cool.
Turns out.
Yeah, it turns out. Finally.
How long does it take?
Yeah, Gaber Mate is like a superstar. That's interesting, regardless of what you think of him. But it's like he's in the zeitgeist, and so that's pretty cool. And it's all here, and we can facilitate that. So we can.
Yeah, recently I said that I said to a couple of my clients on the same day I said this. One of them, I don't know, it might sound familiar to some of you, but I said, you get to be done healing. You get to be complete. And when you're complete, it doesn't mean you're dead. It means that it's time to go do your thing. Yeah. And to your point, we have these healing technologies. I have my Psycharios. Alyse has her metamorphosis method and so on. And we have the Helix method with Louisa, and Baljit has her Akashic Records certifications and trainings for, which is a technology as well. And you have yours, and probably everybody in this space has some kind of multidimensional technology that we have access to that can really speed up the healing process so that we can just go out and create. Mm-hmm. I love that. Elizabeth, thank you.
Yeah, you're
so much. And I'm going to pass the baton over to Alyse because it just seems like the right time to do that.
Shout out to Alyse.
Hey, Alyse. What were you thinking? I just want to dive into it with you. As Elizabeth and I were speaking and Baljit before, what was coming through for you in terms of not just your own topic, but like this larger conversation?
Yeah. So I think that for me, I always, like, this has always been my approach to trauma. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Alyse Bacine, and I'm a breathwork and trauma expert. And I've developed my own methodology to heal trauma that is simple and effective.
And trademarked.
And I officially trademarked. We're registered trademark. Only took 2 years. So the way that I look at it is, I always say, we don't need to go digging around the mud for no reason, because the healing informs the action and the action informs the healing. So I don't ever want to, like, when someone comes and works with me, I want to know, what is the thing that's not working now? And what is it that you want? Because I'm not just going to sit here with you and go through everything that happened in your life because you need to heal it. What's the purpose of that? You know what I mean? And then we just get stuck in this cycle of healing. So it's really just about looking at, okay, what is not working? What keeps repeating? Or what do you want? And then how can we have a parallel or through line back to what I call your core wound that shows up in every area of your life? And how can we address that so that the present time changes, right? And it's very simple, but it's not about just healing for the sake of healing. Or I've never really bought into this idea that you have to heal before you can do whatever. Because a lot of times when you do whatever, that's where you learn what it is that you have to heal. If you didn't do that thing, then you wouldn't really know what it is that you need to look at.
Oh yeah, it's like taking yourself out for a test drive.
Exactly. And then you see what is not working on the car that you have to fix. Not fix, but
yeah. Refine, we'll say.
Yeah, or just look at, acknowledge. So yeah, that's my take on that full conversation. And then in terms of the theme of identity, I think that kind of ties right into it, because from my lens, one of the things I started to see as I did this work with more and more women is that when you do this deeper work to address the unconscious wounding from childhood or unacknowledged wounding, then that's how you really connect with your identity. That's how you really connect with the truth of who you are, because it's no longer clouded by who you thought you had to be in order to survive, or who you thought you had to be in order to receive love or get your needs met. Because most of us are operating from a place of, this is who I have to be in order to get my needs met, in order to survive. And that is ultimately not necessarily who you are. So once we peel back those layers and stop operating from that wounding, then you just are who you just embody who you are.
You just be you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when it comes to closing out this year and preparing, not we have to roll up our sleeves and get to work in the last weeks of this year, but what are a couple of sweet inner child kind of practices that we can bring into our lives that would be supportive of setting the tone for what's to come, including coming back home to yourself in terms of your identity?
When it comes to something like the inner child, right? Like first of all, I still am, is it really inner? Like I never wanted to do inner child work. That wasn't something that I was like, ooh, I'm going to do inner child work with people. To me, that sounded like cheesy.
I know. That's why I asked you, because I love your perspective on this.
But it just so happens that that is like the most direct and effective way to create change, is by addressing where it originated and being able to clearly identify and pinpoint that. I try to make that as tangible as possible for people, because I think that for me, it just seemed like imagining something or visualizing something that didn't seem like it was really doing anything. So to me, I think it's more about being able to connect with and experience this part of you that you've otherwise compartmentalized or haven't acknowledged or put away. So when you get to this place where you're feeling triggered, or you feel like you keep repeating the same thing, or you keep hitting the same wall and you don't know why, instead of making yourself wrong or being like, why do I keep doing this? I'm right back. Nothing's changing. And making yourself wrong. It's like, how can you have a level of compassion for yourself? And at the same time, also starting to tune in with, what is this actually? What am I actually feeling? And how have I actually always felt this way? And how is this related to something that I've felt since as long as I can remember? And then being able to connect with that part of yourself. And I always will relate it to people, especially if you're a mom. If how you're feeling on the inside is that you just want someone to acknowledge you, or you just want someone to see you, and you are making yourself wrong for that, what if your kid, your 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old came to you and said, I really just don't feel like you see me, or I really just don't feel like you acknowledge me? What would you say? You wouldn't be like, oh my God, this again? Get over it. You would be like, oh my gosh.
No, that would be
course I
from
see
millennial
you.
parents. For parents who were raised in Gen X, our parents would have said, get over it. But
oh my God,
you know what I
always
mean?
have
Like
this-
generationally,
Yes.
we see that shifting from Alyse and I had a conversation like this recently when she was asking me about my 2-year-old self. My sisters were born in November and I was 2.5 at the time. And one of them said to me recently in response to my comment that I always feel like this impending doom toward the end of October. And she said, do you think it has anything to do with your twin sisters being born in November when you were 2.5? So I was talking to Alyse about that. And she said, did you have everything you needed when you were 2? And I said, I had a roof over my head and food. And she was like, you're so Gen X. Like,
No, I was like, I was fed like I meant emotionally, Robyn.
suck it up, buttercup. That was Gen X for you. But to your point, like that's not how we want to treat that precious younger part of ourselves either. But when you're trained to do that, and for the Pepsi generation who came before Gen X, even that there are these layers generationally and messaging on how children are treated. And I think, Alyse, one of the things I love about the work that you're doing and the messages that you're sharing right now is around, I'm going to say reparenting yourself, but doing it in the best way possible. Not like your parent did it to you, because that's what got you in the trouble in the first place.
Yeah, because we treat ourselves the way our parents treated us until we become conscious of it and shift it. And it's not only about reparenting yourself, it's also about being able to access the emotion that's underneath of the complex trauma that occurred as you were treated this way over and over again, and those unmet needs that compiled and the suppressed emotion that's there, and being able to walk yourself through that and feel those emotions. Because when you do that, then you create this relationship with yourself where you really trust yourself and you feel like you have been able to hold space for yourself the way you needed someone to hold space for you or support you or be present for you when you were a kid that you didn't get. So it's not just about telling your inner child that it's okay. Again, what does that really do? It's about holding yourself through, walking yourself through those uncomfortable feelings and getting support around it, and then being able to come out on the other side and have this relationship with this part of you, understand this part of you, and also have this alchemy of feeling the feelings. And now this part of you that was unacknowledged and compartmentalized is now integrated into the whole and no longer has to get your attention through picking the wrong partner all the time or whatever you're doing.
I love how you conceptualize the inner child. I don't know if that's the right name for it either, but it does have it's in the conversation. So I think that entry is just such a precious one. So what do you have for us about this holiday season in terms of taking care of that part of ourselves?
Being around your family can always be a great barometer of how much work you've done.
Ram Dass, a great psychologist, always says, you think you're so evolved, go spend a weekend with your family.
Exactly. But it's also a ripe place for information and also just noticing what comes up and observing it and just observing how easy it is to go right back into showing up in a way that you are used to showing up within those dynamics. And there's so many different layers to it, but the more you can observe it and not make it about the other person and really look at what am I actually feeling right now. And a lot of times with our parents, if you're around your parents, the reason why they're so triggering is because their very presence triggers the unconscious unmet need that some part of you is still waiting for them to meet some magical day. So when they don't, then it triggers you because then your inner child is, oh yeah, I needed them to be a parent and they weren't. And I'm still angry about that, right? But when you acknowledge that and you walk yourself through those feelings, then those unmet needs aren't there anymore. So you're able to be around your parents and be much more neutral. So that's the goal. The holidays can just give you a temperature check in terms of where you're at.
It's data
Exactly.
collection.
Exactly.
I love
data
that.
collection.
The science girl loves the data collection. Alyse, thank you. And
thank you.
We are going to bring Louisa.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Good evening from the other side of the world. Louisa had some really interesting things to say. And Louisa, I just want you to take the microphone and roll with this because I love the themes that came through for you, and take it away.
Thank you, Robyn, and good morning. Yes, I'm in Thailand, for those of you that don't know where I am in the world. So on the other side, and I've got the sun beaming in, so hopefully you can see me. And it's lovely to be here with you all. And as I think Elizabeth echoed that she hadn't listened to the other episodes, and I haven't had a chance to either, and I'm so excited to dive into them. But it was just brilliant to see the theme that had clearly evolved from the individual conversations in relation to identity being the key in terms of who are we stepping into, who are we being next year. And the themes that I was shown as I was tuning into the Akashic Records were the themes for us to use as a value filter for next year are in relation to innovation in the term of self-innovation, because we know there's a whole load of innovation going on in the artificial intelligence space. So this is about our own self-innovation, our own ascended intelligence, so that we can reclaim that back and turn to our own ascended intelligence first instead of outsourcing it to artificial intelligence. Let's call the robots, not ChatGPT, or naming them and giving them cute little avatars and things like that. Because that's just a distortion of how we're then being funneled into a new way of getting those dopamine hits, like Baljit was talking in relation to the Instagram scroll. And my goodness, it is you can get sucked into that without even realizing it and getting those hits. And I see that we're doing that with the robots as well, is that they are wanting us to stay on those platforms more and more. Aren't they so helpful? Would you like this? Would you like that? And then before you know it, you've completely outsourced your intelligence to the artificial intelligence. So for me, the innovation piece, that self-innovation, is really inviting people to look through the filter, use that filter of your own ascended intelligence before we're starting to outsource everything. So the filter, just to recap, that was innovation, speed, our relationship with speed, and the principles that we're holding, because I certainly see that this last year feels like it's been a real expose. The masks have been pulled down in relation to the illusions that many people have been creating online. And we are wanting and seeking more and more authenticity, right? And the essence of people. And I was shown that by sharing your principles and the values that you hold, what's important to you, that is how people are going to really feel you and to be able to get to know you in this world.
Louisa, it just occurs to me that we're in an era now, as if we're going to talk about spiritual business ownership for a second, we're in an era where there are so many people who they're really good at what they do. They get really good results for their clients. And so what is the differentiator in the noisy marketplace if it's not client results, if it's not particular line of coaching approach or whatever? What is it? And I think, to your point, it does have to do with the values and what you stand for and your identity, because the identity is going to be, I think that we can all agree with that. That's going to be leading going forward.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I have to tell you, as science girl, I'm not the only science girl here. I know that there are several others in this space right now. But I love that. So Baljit and I talked about power and the physics of power, and you're talking about speed. And I think that can you speak to speed a little bit? Because I think that we get to this place where we have this, like any word that's in the vernacular, we just have this association and assumption about what it means. But when you talk about speed, you talked about it in a very specific way in your podcast interview. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, for sure. So the aspect was in relation to recognizing that everything is going to be speeding up around us, and how comfortable are we with the moving landscape speeding up. But in addition to that, your relationship with speed, so how it can feel nourishing to you and not overwhelming, because so often we can get that misalignment in things moving more quickly, triggering our nervous system and then us shutting it down. So we want to be in that space where we have the capacity for speed to feel nourishing, for us to feel nourished by allowing things to be easy. We get to create our reality. And the aspect of, as we were talking about, identity being so key, because we actually get to choose our identity. Firmly believe that. We bring our essence, our soul essence, of course, but we get to choose our identity. So in our identities that we're taking into or creating for 2026, I'm inviting people to think about, how are you bringing your relationship with speed into that identity that you're creating, so that you can allow yourself to create and move faster. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. And I was thinking that when I think about speed, I think about it as exhilarating. And when you talk about it as nurturing, then I have to talk about frequency, or I have to think about frequency. And how can I be at a frequency where speed is nourishing and not necessarily exhilarating? Because the exhilaration can actually be a dopamine hit rather than a lasting trajectory.
Yes. And then you're going to create that up and down, because you want to be able to hold it and to not go back.
Yes. And so then the nervous system resilience is important, and it continues to be important. And curating the nervous system is part of that. When you think about speed and this community that we're in, this roundtable, what's the message that you think is important for us to hear about speed in particular?
The message I would love everyone to consider, what is important for them, is like, how can you feel nourished by speed? What do we need to let go of in terms of what's the narrative or the thought that just popped into our heads as we thought about speed being nourishing? Because that's the indication of what may need to just be swiftly let go of, and to take some new beliefs for a spin. Like I believe speed is nourishing. I can move quickly and be nourished by that, by things changing quickly. And it comes into that part of, let's create the identity where we can move quickly. Otherwise, we're trying to take the keep our old versions of ourselves with us. We can't take them with us. We have to let those parts of us go. So anywhere that we've had in our current identity, a relationship where we maybe have felt overwhelmed by speed, or speed can feel scary. We know that you can get road traffic tickets, can't you, for driving too quickly and all of those kinds of things. So there's a lot of collective programming, societal programming in relation to this. So the question I would love everyone to think of is, what's my relationship with speed? As we know, things are going to speed up. Frequencies are speeding up. Everything is speeding up. So this is really key to be able to bring that into your creation of your identity for 2026.
Thank you so much. You're amazing.
You're welcome.
Alyse is going to interview me in a moment. And then we're going to I want you guys to be thinking about, it's interesting with women, when I get a group of women together and I say, are there any questions? If there are no questions, like literally nobody speaks. If I get a group of dudes, like bros in a room together, and I ask them if there are any questions, nobody has any questions either, but they're all talking because they all have something to say. Usually it's mansplaining, TBH. Oh, if you don't have a question, perhaps it is an observation. And I like these 4 stems: what I thought, what I felt, what I noticed, and what I realized. And maybe it's one of those that can facilitate a deepening of our conversation tonight. I thought, I felt, I noticed, I realized, or a question. But I feel like with this crew, there may not be necessarily like questions, like how-tos or whys or anything like that. So I feel like that we can deepen this this is more like graduate level work that we're doing here, like master's to PhD level conversations that we're having. So in that case, then the way that we're going to facilitate the exchange is perhaps through one of those other stems rather than a basic question. You're welcome for my psychologist talk that I've given for years to women is probably still coming with me into 2026. All right. Alyse, do you want to come back up?
Okay. I had to switch locations.
Oh,
Anyway, this is more aesthetically pleasing to me anyway.
yes, it's beautiful.
Robyn,
Yeah.
what do you have to say about this conversation of where we're headed? What is popping for you right now?
What I talked about in the podcast was that we're leaving the effort-led like army crawling justification of our role and our purpose and our existence on this planet, and moving into identity leadership, like leading from our identity. And this has come out of really a deep exploration on behind the scenes for me, especially in the last month, but over the last year, really. I've really been asking that question of God and the universe of what am I actually meant for at this point in my life? I'm entering into my second Saturn return. It's okay, girls. I'll go first. It's fine. And as I'm entering into this phase of like really reviewing and making sure that I'm doing what I said I was going to do, what I promised to do when I incarnated. So I've been asking that question a lot. And my sister Jen is somebody who, both of my sisters know me very well, and I go to them for different things. But Jenny always has this way of positioning things that I really get. And all of my family has taken the Neo personality profile. So we all have similar profiles. And she's had me give them to her girls. And so when I interpret the personality, one of the things that I do is I really look at, who are you at your core? Who are you at your core? And I tell people that based on the data. I'm not like making shit up. I'm like, literally, it's from the data. And so she said to me the other day, she works at Google now, and she is working with AI to make AI helpful to physicians in particular. And so she said, what she does is she translates human behavior and needs into a language that the programmers and therefore AI can understand and be helpful to. she said to me, she said, Robyn, what you do is you take God's blueprint for a person and translate it to the person so that they understand who they are. And finally, I feel like I'm landing the plane with that. It's something that I have always done, but it's also, I think, being in this space of spiritual entrepreneurship and working with high ability, very smart, intuitive, and capable women. We are so many things. We're multifaceted, multidimensional. We play so many roles. I did a role stripping workshop a couple weeks ago for some of my community, and they listed anywhere between 21 and 29 roles that they play in any week. So when we strip all of those back, we have to look at, who am I beyond the roles? Who am I? If I'm not a psychologist, who am I? If I'm not affiliated with the university, who am I? And our identity, from where I'm sitting right now, the identity becomes, it's more than a brand. It's more than like how I'm going to show up in the marketplace and sell my programs. But that's where we've been in the past 10 years, Elizabeth, as you've been looking at the trends. I'm sure you could probably speak to that as well, that there's been so much about how we show up and our personal brands and what that means in the marketplace. And we have our bios online, and we have our recommendations online and testimonials and all of those things. And somehow people are supposed to understand that they're meant to work with us based on a little bit more of a facade than what is coming in the future, way more of a facade than what is coming in the future. Because when you're grounded in who you actually are as a human being, as a conscious and divine connection with source, when you really can understand that, and not just understand it, but walk around in it in all of your cells, that is what that frequency that you hold and the space on the planet that you take up as a result of the frequency that you hold and the understanding of who you actually are as a creative being, and that you are, in, as we've talked about, here to create. That's where the magic comes in. And whether it's little magical moments in our lives, or if it's big magic and creating something that's never been here before, bringing something through that's never been here before, that's where we're headed. And I think that the bold among us are here in this room, and the ones who are like already leaning into that call. But this is a first wave. There are thousands of waves that are coming in. And I think that those of us are here right now, understanding who we are better than most people do, probably. That in holding this frequency of, I know, and this happened for me at the end of last year, after I got back from the Betty saga, and I was really dropping back into what I'm supposed to be doing here. I had a session with my therapist, Neil, who has become, like many other people's therapist as well. And I got off that session with him and I said, oh, okay, I know. I remember. I know exactly who I am, and I know exactly what I'm here to do. And it's with that conviction that I believe that everybody is capable of coming into that knowing in a way that is of high benefit, not just to themselves, but to the people that they love, and then to the wider reaching people on the planet. Elizabeth, you remember that? It was powerful. It was almost as powerful as this morning when I woke up with never again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to add something, Elizabeth? Or I'm happy we can open up and.
No, it sparks, for me, it feels like a continuation of everything that we've been saying. And in a way, it's the evolution of the space that we've been in for the past 30 years or so. So much of the work of the leaders that I work with comes down to be more of who you really are. A joke, because that phrase doesn't mean a whole lot and can't really inspire a lot necessarily, but it's also very true too. And we look at it and go, well, what does that really mean? One of the things that I think that you do so well is help people really understand what that means for them in very practical terms, because there's the spiritual aspect of who we really are, right? God, goddess, creator beings. But then there's the life purpose piece. But there's also the vibrational signature piece, which you're speaking of, and being able to take that and translate that into something that's like accurate and true and based in data and not coming from the thinking mind.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I give the Nido to everybody who comes into my world, is because the personality is actually the interface between consciousness, our spirit, our creator spirit, and the outside world. So if we don't have that piece of the puzzle, if we don't know from a personality profile, why do I feel so different from everybody else? Oh, you're no different from it. You're no better than anybody else, whatever. If we're in that space of questioning why I feel so different, or I know I'm here for a purpose, but nobody else seems to know or understand that. Or I had a client one time tell me when she was in kindergarten, she looked around and she said, I think I'm the only human in here. I think everyone else is robots. And she probably wasn't wrong in some ways, knowing her personality profile. But that personality is the interface. And that's what we have to be able to translate, because if that's not translated, there's the rub there, isn't that? When you know exactly who you are from a personality profile, which is boots on the ground human experience, then the creative life force that comes through is able to actually move through and into the material. Otherwise, it gets hung up in the nervous system or in the people pleasing and the agreeableness or the dutifulness or whatever it is in our personalities. But when we really truly understand that, then we're like, okay, this is how I'm wired. And if I'm wired this way, then there has to be a specific instruction manual for this wiring. And that comes through as you understand the personality. And the other piece for all of us too is the intellect and understanding, talking about speed, Louisa, it's the processing speed, being able to figure things out quickly, make sense of things, and know what to do about them.
Yeah. And I just love how you really create the positive framing, for lack of a better word, around it. Because again, in our consciousness sphere, so much is given to, this is you, this isn't you. This is your personality, that's not really you. You're really, with your divine nature, you're both, right? And we have this real distortion that I've struggled with around our human side.
Or it's your ego.
Your ego.
The Freudian ego is the mediator between the superego and the id. The Freudian ego is actually a good thing to have a healthy, strong ego. You need it for this work, and you need it for this life to be able. And that ego, I think, is personality. It's like when we understand the personality, that is a healthy ego.
Yeah.
What else was I going to say? One other thing, and then I want to go to Q&A. I just wanted to share something really cool that came through. Since we've been doing this, I'm so grateful for this space and for you guys, for everybody being here, because I was sitting on the couch the other night. I have this energy technology that I call Psycharios, and it is PSI, which is the psyche, and then Kyrios, which is time, because I work in the timelines and I'm constantly navigating and refining the personality, the psyche. And so I was sitting on the couch on Sunday night. Michael's got a bum knee from his surgery. Cooper's wigged out about whatever he's wigged out about. And I was thinking about homeopathic remedies. I don't know anything about it other than I didn't ever think that they worked for me. And I started reading about how they're just energetic signatures in a tincture. There's no actual active element in it. Louisa says, I love homeopathy. So you'll be able to speak to, I can't even pronounce the names, but I had this idea, like I'm going to ask my chat GPT about some of these symptoms. And then my thought was, if this is just energetics, I can just tap into the energetics, the signature of that particular homeopathic, and channel it. And so I did. And I started with Cooper, and Cooper responded. And then I did some with Michael, and Michael responded. And then I did some, it's fascinating. So that's what personally is coming through for me from going into the future, is really stepping into this role, my identity as healer. And I don't know if that's exactly the right word, but I've played all of these other roles at my core. The Archangel Raphael is my go-to, and I have the healer. That's my archetype. So that's where I'm headed in terms of my own identity. Does that make sense? And then I had this morning this idea that I was going to send out invitations to test drive the homeopathic Psycharios methodology. So stay tuned for that. All right. So let's take a deep breath. Thank you for that. Take a deep breath and let it go. And I'd love to, if you guys can type into the chat, a couple of things you noticed, realized, thought, felt, as we've been moving through this night together, or day for Louisa, morning. She's going to have her coffee, and I'm going to have our tea, and I'm going to have my nightcap. Kidding. Okay. Let's see here. And Brenda had to sign off. And then I'd love to hear from Louisa, Baljit, did you have anything that you wanted to bring forward or help us be aware of? Or Alyse or Elizabeth?
Just, I can add to the conversation. One of the things that I had scribbled down as a reflection point was coming back to what Baljit was saying in the beginning around misdirected energy and how misdirected sexual energy is impacting our imagination. And I know that everyone knows here, this is really key because this is how we create through our imagination. And so just wanted to bring that forward again so that we can remember that in terms of, as we're walking away, thinking about how are we nurturing our imagination and taking care of it, and what do we need to let go of so that we can be fully empowered in our imagination.
Thank you. All right. I have a group project for us. Everyone's, and somebody got triggered from third grade group projects. I got you though. I'm kidding about the group project. Elizabeth, you actually brought this to the top of my mind. So I want to just acknowledge that. Naming the moment. And I was thinking about that today and thinking about how we put pressure on ourselves to name the moment for the collective, like it's somehow our responsibility to call a moment for everybody. But we're all fractals of this beautiful creative life force. And so I think that it will be fun and interesting if everyone can just tune into your own hearts and your own spirits and type into the comments, name this moment for you, because it's a contribution. This isn't talking heads, a one-trick pony. This is, everybody has a contribution in this space and going forward as well. Everyone always has, but it just is even more important for us to notice that right now. So take a moment, name this moment in time. Maybe it's this moment right now, or maybe it's this phase, this end of the year. Michelle says connection. Leslie says, yeah, Leslie, identity is so important in your work too. And yes, you are right on track as one of the leaders in the, that intersection of psychology, spirituality, and energetics. What's the moment? Elizabeth, do you have anything you want to say about what's this moment?
Yeah, I was just typing it in. I keep coming back to this phrase, the new era. And because I'm like, what exactly is this moment for me? And honestly, maybe it's because I've been on calls for 5 hours today and it's 6:20 and I got to go feed the love child and all of that. But I really do just come back to this new era phrase because I've been building toward, I really feel like the closing of the chapter I just closed and the opening of the new chapter is happening at the perfect time. And there was no way it could have come any earlier, much to the chagrin of my 37-year-old self. If you'd told her that it would take this long, I'd be like, I'd opt out. But yeah, I just feel like it's a whole, like I feel like I've just started the rest of my life in a way. And it very much corresponds with everything that we spoke about, like and things speeding up and being really equipped to handle that. So that's what I got.
Yeah, Elizabeth, and getting to do it versus having to do it.
Yeah, and feeling like really, I think I don't know if it was on our interview or not, but I'm like, I'm not a big fan of having my juvenilia out there. So I really feel like I'm at a certain point for a certain thing.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So naming the moment, vital. And then for our Oracle Caliber leaders today, final thoughts. I know we had some questions that we were playing with, but just any final thoughts that you have for us, something that you're going to take away or something that you are going to amplify as we go forward.
I can start. I think one of the things that I shared in my episode is around the way we value ourselves, specifically our feeling, needs, desires, and how we show up in relationship to those within ourselves and other people. That's been a huge theme with my clients. And this unconscious assumption that's generational, that we need to sacrifice our needs for others or our feelings aren't important. And that I feel like that sounds cliche or obvious, but the unconscious way this is operating in your life, I guarantee it's like a well that just keeps on giving. So that's something that I'm really seeing as a theme right now, because I see it show up everywhere. And I think that's going to be something that starts to shift just around this way that we've been operating around not like operating from this assumption that your feelings are not as important as blank. So I'm going to leave that and I'm just going to go off camera because I'm hungry.
Do it. Thanks, Alyse. Baljit, Elizabeth, Louisa, final thoughts? Does anyone want to take on the theme of speed? How does it differ?
Yeah, I
from-
was just going to actually do
Yeah,
that.
Go ahead.
I really appreciate what Louisa brought forward and on becoming comfortable with speed and having speed be a nourishing thing, which it isn't for me so much. It is, but it isn't, right? There are certain areas where it's really challenging. But I think, I guess the final thoughts, I'll just name this. I'm really excited about what's to come, even with all of the chaos. And we all know that things are about to take probably a pretty dark turn. Like people have been speaking into that and we've been building toward whatever the dissolution is in our collective that needs to happen. And that's not going to be a fun thing necessarily, but I'm actually really excited because things are breaking down. And again, going back to cycles, that's been a big part of the conversation that is, for as long as I've been in our industry, is that things are speeding up and things are breaking down. And we're really seeing the culmination of that. And I'm as uncomfortable as it can be, I'm really excited about it and love the frames that we're getting here to equip us for it.
I love that. Thank you. Louisa?
Yeah, thank you. Just in terms of us reflecting on Tiffany's question around how does the theme of speed differ from jumping timelines as you see it? And the thing that's coming through to me is really the question of, or the perception of, that whatever timeline we're on, the speed is going to speed up. So we want to make sure that we are on the timeline that we want to be on, and doing the inner work and creating the identity so that we're embodied in that and we can stay on the right timeline and we're not speeding off onto a timeline that we don't want to stay on. And just reflecting on what Elizabeth was saying with all the things that are going on in the collective, for me, the question, whenever there's, because there's always chaos going on in the collective, it just has a different narrative, doesn't it? Something else is happening. But I always ask myself, what is mine to do in light of what's going on? And I think that's something that we can all consider so that we can know that we've got our little part, our contribution that we can make. And together, collectively, we're taking care of it all.
Beautiful. Louisa, did you want to read Maria's comment so that you can, because I think that gets at your speed as
Thank
well.
you. It was an interesting sensation as Louisa was sharing about speed, nurturing versus overwhelming. And the comparison that I felt was as a flying bird pushed in flight versus a runaway truck. Both cases connected to fear of not being able to stop. But yet again, runaway trucks, ramps also exist, have no fear. Has no fear. Yeah. And it is that sense of that runaway sensation, feeling like you have no control. And that's where we want to really allow the body to feel safe with speed and for it to feel nourishing and not, oh my God, I'm out of control, because that's when we put the brakes on and then we create this roller coaster effect in terms of the reality that we're creating.
Yeah.
Results of experience.
I also think about speed as, of course, frequency. And so with timeline jumping in particular, when you increase frequency, if you're moving to like your cosmic timeline, I see comes out of your heart. And this is the timeline that is meant for you. And so when you're in sync with your cosmic timeline, that's the true frequency for you to be at. And that's going to be a very high frequency, and it will be fast because it's vibrating very fast. And Baljit, final thoughts, my dear?
My word was visionary, and it ties into speed. When we start to direct our sexual energy, then we align to our actual vision versus the misdirected vision. So I think that's really important as well, as we align to the correct vision that we're meant to be expressing into this world. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'm going to give my closing thoughts. I prepared something for us. And of course, first, I just want to thank everybody, for each of you, for joining us, for bringing your depth and your curiosity and your sincere hearts. And whether you're listening here with us live or later, here's what I know for sure. One, and maybe you can relate to this, I'm not here to lead in a broken spiritual system. And I'm not here to resuscitate the wounded priestesses so that they can return to broken altars. I've walked through spiritual distortions. I've felt manipulation and control and cult dynamics dressed up in love and light and peace. And frankly, I've stood at the gates of hell and I've come back and walked through the fire, and many of you have as well. And what I know for sure is never again, plus jamais. So my North Star is this, that I'm here to retrieve and restore, protect and preserve human consciousness. That's what guides everything that I do. So I want to live in a world where integrity is the initiation and magic is used to create, not to control. And identity is not something to be overcome or beaten into submission, but something to lead from. The other night I was on the massage table. My chiropractor had come over to work on us, and I was laying there and I was praying and I was thinking about what's next. And back to that question that I've been asking God and the divine. And what came through while I was on the table was, you can keep offering a version of what everyone else is doing, or you can begin offering only what you can do. And so that's the invitation, not just for me, I think, but for all of us, is we don't have to perform anymore and tap dance, and we don't have to adapt and contort ourselves, but we can really make the decision to offer, to bring forward, to create that which only we can create. Your identity is your gift. Your gift is not separate from your identity. Your identity and your gift are the same. So when you lead from your identity, your gifts flow. Your gifts come into the world. So I didn't say what my moment was for myself, but my moment right now is communion. It's communion with myself and with God, and with what I'm like very convicted of in terms of my yes and no, my absolutely never agains. So I didn't plan this. It just came through. And my guess is that something in you is also coming through and stepping in and saying, probably finally. And then that means that you're a part of this as well. We're all a part of this. We're all fractals in this. It's not just Louisa and Alyse and Elizabeth and Baljit and me. It's all of us who are here now, and each in our own way provide a different fractal, a different frequency, a different creative process and creative outcome. But we're all a contribution. And I believe that this is the beginning of that new era, Elizabeth, where we lead. And I believe it's beginning right now. And I just want to thank everybody for being here again.
Great blessings. Big love, everyone. Thank you so much.